No.
Yeah.
And I remember back when, they fired Lutz, and I pulled up the article just to, you know, remember it word for word, but the front office publicly admitted that the team hasn't been able to meet the expectations of, the fans during that departure. And I feel like in firing a coach or, a sporting director, typically like the front office itself doesn't take any sort of blame. Typically it's like, we had disagreements with this manager, or, we just didn't see things going, the way that we wanted. But like our front office full on went out and said like, we're not doing a good enough job, and it's not like fully on Lutz. And I think that that in itself signals how that gap is real and just how big it is. So, and we know that the supporters, including us, have been feeling that way the entirety of the season. But it felt to me like they were trying to put a band-aid on something for a reason unbeknownst to me, when, Hen, like you said, we did have those 6 months to start conversations with other people. And it almost felt like the front office kind of gave up on the team to an extent, in the back half of the season, and,
I
and
feel like
sort
they
of
did
wrote
for
them off.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
You either burn it all down and start over, or you stick with what you've got, and they didn't do either. Like we sacked the coach, who I imagine Lutz was very instrumental in signing. I don't blame Olaf for lying in his job interview. Everybody does, but you've got to vet. Like you've got to make sure that you know what you're gonna get. And Lutz was also one of those guys that was on the bench and giving information and giving thoughts and feedback to Olaf, who wasn't doing anything about it. So if Lutz was a major contributing factor in the hiring of him, you sack him 10 games in. And if Lutz was a part of that too, then fine. But maybe sack him then and start over. Like, if we're calling this season a wash, they obviously thought, after the 12 game skid we went on and we fired Olaf, there's still something to save, right? And I think that we saw that. But we see in sports all the time, like especially American sports, tanking for the draft type thing. There's no reason to go out and make some of those selling team type moves. Like if we're gonna do this and we're gonna try and focus on next year, then make some tough decisions. Get rid of guys that we know are good and quality, but we need to bring something in for next year. We didn't do that either. It was just so stagnant that Lucas, at that point, I think you're 100% right. Is that I think they're just out of their depth from an ownership standpoint, and they're just throwing stuff at the wall and seeing if it sticks.
And maybe that's why, bringing on this, this Corey Gray cat is one of those, instant, like one of the more intelligent decisions, because we talked about it, whenever we first announced his signing, and we did our, background research on him, and, what he was able to do, at Columbus
Montreal.
and
Yeah.
Montreal with, a very small budget.